Okay, welcome everybody. My name is William Woodworth, Lawinogwas. I am Bear Clan of the Mohawk Nation. My dad is British though, so I'm sort of what when I was a boy they called a half-breed, which they won't use today. It was considered even a minor compliment when I was a boy. But we don't talk like that now, but there's still a truth in it. Now, the course is called 12 Architectures, and I explained in the last session, Lecture 1, that the 12 Architectures comes from two things. One, there are 12 lectures in the course, so I had to conceive of something in 12 episodes, and it came to me that I could tell the entire sweeping history of Haudenosaunee Iroquois culture right from the beginning of the cataclysmic falling from the sky of a meteor, and which is Sky Woman, and her more or less story of developing the place that we live right now, Turtle Island, and take you right through every episode, prehistoric and historic, down to the present day, so that during the last lecture it's all about contemporary architecture, but it's going to be based on all of the knowledge accumulating in the first 11 lectures. So it's very ambitious, it's kind of a huge project, but someone has to start telling it this way. I feel we can't just have little episodes, where you get up and you say, "Oh, I'm native, and we have to be kind to the Mother Earth, and we're being very disrespectful," and everyone feels really guilty, and the native person goes away, they feel badly. No. Let's tell a happy story, because quite frankly, the ancestors lived for thousands of years in great happiness. That is a fact. The darkness started coming over 500 years ago when settlers started coming from strange places, which is the experience we have today. We have people coming from disparate places whose story has nothing to do with what's happening here right now. They have come out of sometimes desperation, sometimes out of hope. And they're at a loss how to fit in. If we don't help them and teach them, they'll never know how to fit in. They'll think the world is just a blank slate and they can go wherever they want. Well, I want to show you that you really can't do that, and it's okay. It's actually quite beautiful. Okay, so that having been said, by the way, I don't know whether I gave you my native name. It's Lawinogwas. He's the one who dips words. And of course, I'm speaking to you, and this is my duty, my native duty given in my name. I am dipping the words from water, which is a very honored thing. In the last lecture, I did the Thanksgiving address, and if you go back and listen to it, you'll see how much it is about water in the beginning, because that's my identity. I'm the one who works with the water. So, okay. Everything in Native culture is a duty. That's just the bottom line. It's what you are supposed to do, what you have to do, now that you're here in this place. So, when my chief would say, I'm very disturbed by young people I teach because they don't know what they're supposed to do in their life. And he said because their grandparents were supposed to touch them when they were born, and they would know immediately who they were and what they were going to do in life. And the grandparents' job was to help them be who they are. But today, students say, "Oh, well, I went to a university catalog to look at the programs available to decide what I'm going to do." My chief would say, "That is so pitiful." I know in architecture, oftentimes architects, as myself included, knew they were going to be an architect at a very young age. And I don't know where it came from, but I knew when I was 13 years old that this would be my life. And I never really wavered. There are times when I was sort of frustrated that I didn't have a choice, that I had to be an architect, and I wanted to maybe try something else, but never really worked, except that I could teach at a certain point. The course has assignments, and I'm going to give these to you, in a written form. But for now, I'll describe to you that you're here in the course without condition. There is no judgment. And you're just free to be present. This is what's important. And to absorb. Like, I don't know if you're going to hear everything I say. I don't think you will. But you will remember what you need to remember. And very interestingly, in this climate we have right now, the lectures are all recorded, and you go back and review them at your leisure. So the second part of the course is a paper, written paper, midterm, and I call it the ancestral migration. It's something you can begin thinking about right away, because you're going to describe in the paper of 2,000 to 3,000 words who your ancestors are, going back as far as you can go. Whether it's your grandparents, great-grandparents, or just parents, who are they? Where did they come from? And what is their migrational path to bring you to the point where you're sitting in front of your computers right now, having a course in native architecture? How did you get here? Because it is a story, and it is a journey, and you need to go back as far as you can. Then we'll all know who you are, because you're going to share it with us in a class, and where all of a sudden our lives are all going to become visible to each other, and we'll begin speaking to each other as who we are. And who are we? Well, we can be native to a place, or we can be a settler, a visitor, a refugee. Those are all titles that apply to all of us, because we're here sometimes under more than one condition. I'm here as a native person, but I'm also a refugee in a certain way, because of the way I came to Canada in 1970. I was actually born an American. I always saw myself as an American, but it came that I had to make a choice, and my mother said, return home to Canada. And I never considered it my home, but when I got here, I realized it is my home. But I'm also a stranger in my home, because I wasn't raised like my Canadian friends. So I was always a little different. It set me apart. I didn't like being apart necessarily, but that's the condition of a refugee. And there's another word for what I am, expatriate. A lot of people who come to Canada are expatriates. They're leaving the patriotism of their home place to find a new home. A new home, first of all, that has no war. That's number one, no war. People don't like to be in war, and they will do anything to avoid it, at least in my experience. Some people love to fight wars. Well, they're in their own realm, but they're not here, because this is not a warrior culture. As a native person, as a Mohawk, I am in a warrior culture. We are the frontline warriors for our people, and we protect them. And that is my native heritage. So on one side, I'm a peacekeeper. On the other side, I'm a warrior. And this is two-ness. It's carrying two identities, which I was told by an elder once that it's a very honored place to be, to have two worldviews and held in one person, because those are the people who are going to help us bridge our differences. They're the only ones who can help us. Two identities carried in one person. Many of you in this class may have that in your ancestry. I'd certainly like to hear about it in your paper. because it's a key, deep theme of this course. And then the last part, the last assignment is going to be a poster assignment. You will be designing a building based on the archetype of the forever longhouse, but to meet modern needs. What does that mean? How do we live together in one longhouse? Are we supposed to? Is it been done? It has been done all over the world. There are modern longhouse settlements. They call them communes. They're in Europe. Because it's very popular in Europe. They're in North America. And I'm going to show you some examples, beautiful examples of contemporary longhouses. And I want you to design one for your sense of community, just so you have the first-hand experience of being an architect utilizing cultural knowledge. That is true culture. Okay, so the next part, the books for the course. I have a courseware book. I'm trying to retrieve it from the archive. It has quite a few articles in it, some of them written by me, some of them written by others, that supplement the books for the course. You're going to be interested to know that the primary first book for the course is not written by a native person, although I could have chosen something by a native person, but I chose it from a settler, a very honored settler, John Ralston Saul, who is one of the most respected academics in Canada. His wife, Adrienne Clarkson, was the Governor General, the finest Governor General we've ever had, probably. And John is her husband. He has a career of his own. And a few years ago, he wrote an amazing book called A Fair Country, Telling Truths About Canada. This is an absolutely extraordinary story. What he does is to look at the history of Canada to understand that it is founded by three peoples. Three peoples. And we can never change that. The first, of course, are the First Nations. They are the original founders of this country. This country is called Canada. That is the native word, and it's been called Canada long before they gave it the name of the country Canada. It's a Mohawk word. It means the village. We are living in the village. We called the Longhouse settlement the Canada. And this country is called Canada. It's fitting, it's strange, it's very humbling, because it's not the heroic idea of the country with a great eagle and warriorship. No, it's a village. It's where we all come to live together happily. Canada. Then the next founding nation, the French. That's the second most important nation. Why? Because they came to Canada first. Cartier. And they're still here, and they still have the lovely independence of Quebec. And they will never let it go. They have their own language. It's not a native language, but it is for them, French. And then the third partner in this great triumvirate is England, Great Britain. The British still have a hold over this country. Their queen is our queen. Our chief, in a sense, is the queen. And so we see the British as very tribal people, because they have the Scots, and the Scots and the Mohawks got along together very well, because the Scots were warriors like we were, and they even wore outfits like we had. So when they came with the British troops, they became our very close friends, the Scots. But I'll tell you, the French became very close friends of ours as well, because Cartier said to his men, because there were no women that came over, marry a native woman and have those children. You can marry them. And that's exactly what Cartier's men did. And today, most of the people in Quebec have native blood, if you can believe it. And if you talk to them, they'll be able to trace it back, because Quebecers have a deep memory. The English have a deep memory as well. And Native people have a deep memory. So we have these three founding cultures. That is Canada. Now, everything that's happening after that is something else. But that is not Canada. Canada is what he just described, founded by three countries, three nations in a sense. It's absolutely remarkable. So I will give you readings in this. You can read the entire book if you like. But he's so eloquent. He's a wonderful writer. The first part's called A Métis Civilization. A Métis is a combination of native and non-native. We call it Métis. We have an entire nation out west called the Métis. And then the original founding ideas of the country were spelled out by the original Scottish thinkers: peace, fairness, and good government. This is our Declaration of Independence. It's not heroic. It's not about throwing out anybody. It's about peace and good government and respect for the crown. And we love this idea. Native people love the idea of respect for the crown because we have respect for our chiefs. And so when the Americans were fighting George III, we were very upset as Mohawks. How can you war against your own chief? What are you doing? You know, and that when you leave your chief, who are you? You're a renegade. And so we saw the American side as a country of renegades. And in a sense, they call themselves freedom lovers. But obviously their idea of freedom has its conditions around it. Very happy that we're in Grenada. And this is, of course, about Canada. Now, the second book is absolutely remarkable. And everyone should own this book. Native American Architecture by Nabokov and Eason. This is the finest book ever written about Native architecture. And it's, I'll give you some reading assignments in it, but it's illustrated, but it's very dry. It's not a coffee table book. It's an informational book of the highest order. And these men studied native building types all over North America and were able to write this absolutely remarkable book. I'm surprised it's not more popular than it is, but it's won awards over the course of its life, and it never tires. The information in this book is forever. You know, here, for instance, we have the simple photograph of the hands tying the reeds around the poles. We'll talk about the origins of this picture in the course. And then, of course, we have the bent wood structures, and then the longhouse. He goes into the archaeology of it, but then it sweeps way past that and goes out west, crossing North America as the settlers did, east to west, and ends up in California. And we don't think of California as a native place, but it is on the most profound level. The Pomo Indians, some are still there, but the history of a place like California is very dark. Because what happened, California was such a beautiful destiny in people's imagination. Then, unfortunately, they found gold there, which brought out the worst types of people, greedy. And many of those greedy people were retirees from the Civil War, which was an awful war, and many of those men were damaged with post-traumatic stress. They had no families, and they settled that place, and it became wildly unjust. They killed off almost every native person in California, but some of them did survive. And fortunately, when I did my doctoral work, was in California. Our elder for our doctoral program was a Pomo Indian, Esther. I'll show you a picture of her later, but Esther was so wonderful, and she's a survivor in her nation, a survivor among very few. But she welcomed us, and she wanted us to do our studies on the land of her ancestors. And she's the one who gave us permission to be in the beautiful redwood forest where we did our studies. We're so honored. So that's Native American architecture, sweeping from the Longhouse to the Pomo Indians, who actually did types of bent wood structures, and they're famous for their basketry work. So we're going to be looking at a few of those native people that inhabited North America today in the next lecture. Now, the last book, again, absolutely astounding book. Native Science, The Natural Laws of Independence, of Interdependence. These are the true laws of nature, written by Gregory Cajete, who is a Navajo. He's a Navajo scholar, and he has quantified all of the elements of native science, not Western science. This stands in contrast to it. Native science. Native science. Let's get the idea. Western science, native science. Two different things, side by side, but they can't inform each other. But the Western scientist has too much predominance today. And in terms of the kind of research they do and whatever, it railroads over everything in this world. And the people who are holding native science are given short shift and treated like what's called the alterity, the outsider. Native science is not for the outsider. It should be the dominant science that we have. This is the true science. The science that is in the Thanksgiving address. That doesn't feed scientific dystopias, like getting into a rocket and going to Mars because we're ruining this planet. It's so wrong. I mean, from a native standpoint, it's terribly wrong. It's like the dinosaurs. In the creation story, they were put underground. Don't bring them up. So I know my chief went to see the movie Jurassic Park. And I said, didn't you find that disturbing? They were bringing up the dinosaurs. Oh, it's just a movie. I said, yeah, but think about our creation story. They weren't supposed to be brought up, were they? And he would laugh, because he knew that was true. Anyway, native science, and you'll be having some assignments from this. Very easy to read. Very easy. But extremely direct about what we're dealing with in the world. And you know, it begins with telling a story, because native culture always begins with a story. And so in the last lecture, I told you the first story, creation. Every culture has a story. And that story is not to be taken lightly. I don't take any creation story of any culture on the planet as if it's just myth and it's silly. That's why I tried to show you our creation story has an essence in a meteor fall from Earth thousands of years ago. And we know it happened, and we know that the dinosaurs were made extinct and put under the ground in that meteor fall, and that that was the origins of a human being coming. Who is Sky Woman? Who is she? Fell through a hole in the sky. Probably a visitation from another world. Wouldn't you think? Yes. We all came from somewhere else, and it's out there. And that's what our creation story told us right from the beginning. It's magical, because the truthfulness of it is so stunning. And you know, we have people today who study the fact of alien visitation to death, but they don't really go back to the simple truth that happened here. A simple meteor fell here, a major meteor that disrupted the entire planet for thousands of years. But something survived, and it was like one person, one human being who came from another place, and became the genetic origin of all of us. What could be so unbelievable about that? I showed you the evidence. The evidence is there at the Yucatan right now. Where the meteor fell, it's all marked out. And right at the center of where it fell, I showed you last week, the first Mayan sacred site, Dibble Chaltun. And it's there, and I showed you pictures of it. And it's called the Temple of the Seven Dolls. I'll show you the seven dolls today. What are the seven dolls? You know, they're about that high. They're made of clay. And in our creation story, the first men were made by the good twin out of clay. And there they are at Dibble Chaltun, the seven sacred dolls. They took them out of the temple and put them in a beautiful museum next to the sacred site. So you see the grand circle of all this is stunning. So you have the assignments and you have the textbooks. Now I think we can switch gears and I can continue the narrative of 12 architectures. Now, when I give this lecture, I set the classroom up in kind of psychodramatic forms. And this, we clear everything away and the entire class sits in a circle. And they're not used to sitting in a circle in a classroom. So immediately there's a lot of giggling and a lot of happiness, and people love the fact they can sit on the floor in a classroom. Some bring a pillow, some are just happy to be on the floor. But when you sit in a circle, there's the center of the circle. Just like Dibble Chaltun is the center of the crater. What is in that center? Well, I make a gesture to what's supposed to be in it. This is a tobacco tie, which you'll be hearing about. We put tobacco in a small cloth pouch, tie it up. And this is our communication, let's say, with an elder. We come, and he says, okay, I'll talk to you. You brought me the tobacco. Now, what I'm doing here in my circle, I say we're going to make tobacco ties in the colors of the 4 races of the planet, which is our sacred circle. Do you realize that there's white, there's the white race, there's the yellow race, there's the red race, that's just named, and there's the black race. Those are the color of the medicine wheel. So I've got tobacco ties in each color, and I set them in the circle. Now, which one is missing? What is the other predominant race? They're brown. And as a matter of fact, I was reminded by an elder that if all the people on the earth got together and had children, that everyone would be brown. There would be no white, yellow, red, black. There would be brown, because that is the natural color of the human race. Now, that's what we need to teach each other as we grapple with this issue of race. It's so confused right now. It's just outrageous. You've got a culture war going on. Okay, everyone who's black, they're struggling with everyone who's indigenous, with everyone who's white, and white are the big no-no today, the evil ones. And, we're all going out on the street and fighting each other as if, our difference is what's supposed to be our conversation with each other. No, we have to stop that and realize who we are, and it's been taught to us for thousands of years. And why aren't we listening to it? Years ago, digress, the Vietnam War spurred this very same kind of energy. Tremendous confrontations, police and people who were against the war. Then there were people who wanted the war, and they were all warring with each other. Well, the great American poet Robert Bly was in the midst of it, and he founded a group called American Poets Against the War, and wrote the most amazing poem called The Earth Mother Naked at Last. And what he said to us in the poetry reading during all of this turmoil was, you know, you people are going out and you're smashing the windows of stores and, you know, crowding the streets with your anger, when right there, that library that you're going by has all the thoughts of the most wise people who've ever trod this planet. And you're walking by them protesting, when you could go in there and learn wisdom. And you remember last week I gave you a quote from Sun Bear about wisdom and the importance of not just knowledge, but knowledge that leads to wisdom. And wisdom means stop fighting. Start agreeing with each other. Start embracing each other. Now, I put the colors of the 4 directions in the middle of the circle. So visually, you just have a little visual. The 4 races of the planet, all represented by the sacred tobacco. Huge. There's nothing more powerful than that circle with those tobacco ties. More powerful than any other sacred site on the planet. Because that's the elements of the sacred site. And they're very simple. I could tell you stories about keeping it simple. Because the most powerful things are simple. Again, a little digression. One of my teachers was the great Hawaiian kahuna, Hale Makua. And Mr. Makua and I had kind of a friendship. He was considered the most important kahuna in Hawaii at the time. He's gone now. But for some reason or other, we had a warm friendship. And he said to me one day, okay, you're an architect. I'm going to give you the kapua for you. Kapua is a sacred instruction which you must follow and which the kahuna gives out to people. This is my instruction to you. You will be the architect of the most beautiful temple ever built on earth. I said, what? That's nuts. I'll never be in a position like that. I live in a, minor country, Canada, and I'm by myself, and, that's a huge assignment. Well, he said it's not Chartres Cathedral, I'll tell you that. The most important temple of all time, Bill, is a secret place. And it's in nature. What it is, and you'll see it here when we talk about the Longhouse and the original inspiration for it, it's a secret place. And it's kind of an opening in the bush, dark. And people don't know to go in it. It looks like it's perhaps an animal nest or something. But if you go in it, you will be shot through the entire length of it in an instant. It's a longhouse, but it's in the bush. It's not built by anybody. It's given to us. And when you're shot through that, you will come out the other end, and it'll be very sunny and very thick grass, quite damp. And you'll roll out of the end of that after just a few seconds, and you'll sit upright. And you know what you're going to do? You're going to say to yourself, I'm awake. I know why everything is the way it is. That is the sacred temple of all time. And you're going to do it. So I'm still waiting for the moment when that's going to happen. I do feel as I get older that it will happen. But it'll be a magical moment, I'll tell you. Because when people go into that, and they're not going to line up. Because he said most people will not want to go in that temple. Because the transformation will be so quick and so profound. And they don't want to wake up in a way. They're in this dream and they seem to be happy in it. But this is not life. This is not it. So I took that as a great sacred instruction. I know I'm wandering around things because we're coming now into a great narrative, another great narrative. The question is, Where did the Iroquois come from? I was colonized, what they call colonized. I was so colonized, I thought academia was about questions and answering questions. No. In a sense, the questions are already answered because the questions have already been asked down through time. The answer has already been given. You just have to look around and be awake to it. It's all done. Everything is done. Now that takes a great weight off of somebody who thinks that they're doing groundbreaking research work. And in my doctoral program, it was a different research methodology where I had to listen. And then I had to absorb, and then I had to reflect back. It's that reflecting back that you're going to be doing in this class that will tell me what you've heard. So, where are we going to begin with this? Where did the Iroquois come from? No anthropologists, no archaeologists, and all the wisdom of academia in the world today have they ever been able to answer that question. It's almost like asking, where did we all come from? Because it's baffling. And in a sense, as Iroquoians, we replicated that. But we did come from somewhere, and in my experience, I learned where I think we came from. In fact, I'm quite certain of it. And my friends who are archaeologists get very frustrated with me because I jump to an answer where they would never jump to the answer I did because they have to go through a different set of hoops than I go through. But I'm happy because I know the answer to the question which baffles them. Okay, I wish I could have this big so I can read it.
Okay, do you want me to take it off of presenter notes?
Yeah, maybe that's an idea because I need to now read these slides. And is there a pointer option?
If you can use the mouse, would that work?
Maybe it could. Yeah, well, very nice.
My
Yeah.
goodness, where'd it go? Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you can use the mouse, that would be...
Let's see. Does it show up nicely?
You know what?
In my program, I get a red circle if I want it.
It's all right. Neat.
What's
I don't
that?
know how you do that.
I don't either. My,
Huh.
but I was using it the other day, and it had a function on PowerPoint. Pointer. If you go to PowerPoint.
Pointer options.
Yeah. Okay. There we go.
How about laser pointer?
Yeah. Why not?
There
Yeah.
you
That's
go.
it.
Okay.
That's the one I like.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right.
Gee, we solved all these things.
See, I'm learning something here.
We're all learning, but we will get through this. Now,
I hope so.
now we're going over vast amounts of time. Remember, when did humans come? When did they come? The narrative in North America is different than the narrative over in the Middle East and Europe. It's just different. It's almost as if there were two origins on the planet, not just one. They were happening simultaneously, side by side. Why not? Who is to say that human beings didn't come here in one event? Why not two events? Why not three events? This is something that Western scientists don't like to hear. They don't like origins having more than one event. They don't like it. They like it reduced to something they can get a handle on. But sometimes you have to face the fact. Here we have 4 maps during the Ice Age, which is very important because the Ice Age occurs in Iroquoian territory 14,000 years ago. That's when the first evidence of human life here takes place through the evidence of archaeology. But they don't know anything about the people who left those artifacts. They don't know their language, they don't know their culture, they know nothing. All they know is here are some projectile points, arrowheads. Here are some tools. Here's some evidence of something that was built here, basically a dark shadow in the earth, and they're baffled. 14,000 years ago, but look at the ice. It's covering all of southern Ontario and upstate New York. It was under a sheet of ice, and the ice was very deep, hundreds of meters thick, couldn't be penetrated. And then 9,000 years ago, look what happens. In 5,000 years, it recedes. It recedes to the point where we have what's today known as the Canadian Shield up north. There's a break in the type of vegetation that takes place along that line. And in southern Ontario and upstate New York, we have a very benevolent forest called the Carolingian forest, which is distinctive because it has both evergreen and deciduous trees in it, and abundant types of plants and bushes. Very different. And when you go up north, let's say to Owen Sound and north there, you'll see the landscape changes. You don't have the same plants. And up in Muskoka, you have a certain type of forest. It doesn't occur down below where we are. This is huge. Then 7,000 years ago, another 2,000 years, it recedes even further. And the beautiful Manitoulin Island and Georgian Bay are all exposed. The Georgian Bay is important because it's one of the most beautiful, pure bodies of water on the planet. The Great Lakes are very important because they are the largest collection of freshwater bodies on the planet. This is an extraordinary landscape for the whole world. And we just treat it like, oh, it's the Great Lakes and we go fishing and boating and swimming. No, it's way beyond that. It's sacred. And then 4,000 years ago, it's gone. 4,000 years, not that long. But that's when Iroquois started to form, 4,000 years ago. Now here you see Lake Ontario, and then in dark, you see the Great Lake Iroquois. And it left a lot of the shoreline of Lake Ontario underwater, including Toronto, right up to the ridge in Toronto, all underwater. Hamilton was underwater. The New York State, it's all underwater. And you see where the ice is? This is the 4,000 years ago. And there they are, with all that history erased as it is today. The serenity of the Great Lakes sitting on the land. It's absolutely astounding. And, we should never take it for granted. The beautiful Lake Ontario. The water is flowing out this way. It starts here at Lake Michigan. It's flowing. The beautiful Lake Michigan in Chicago. Then it goes here through the beautiful Straits of Mackinac. Stunning landscape. And the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, absolutely amazingly gorgeous. And then the beautiful Lake Huron with its benevolent sand beaches. Lake Superior, north of Superior, mythic landscape for Canada's history and painters, north of Superior. And then we go through here, we have the Bruce Peninsula, and here we have the beautiful Georgian Bay. The water is so pure there today. You can see down into it hundreds of feet. It's almost like primordial water. And of course the Manitoulin Island, the great sacred island of native people. We come down, and now we're in. Cambridge is in here. The Grand River of the Iroquois is right in here. We're all adjacent to the beautiful Lake Ontario. You come down through here, the ships come down, they go through Detroit here, which is very spiritual. It's the place of of the narrow strait. And that's where Native people could cross, right there at Detroit. Very sacred. And we'll learn a bit about Detroit. And then you come down here, and then the water's flowing here, and then it flows up, out. One of the most beautiful rivers in the world, the St. Lawrence. Think about it. It's one of the most beautiful rivers in the world. And we think, oh, we got to go down and see the Amazon, or we have to see the Nile, or whatever. How about the St. Lawrence? And how about the beautiful cities, Hochelaga, Montreal, Strathcona, Quebec City? Just saying those words, it gives me goosebumps. I want to melt, because that's where my ancestors were. But some of my ancestors were down here, in the beautiful Finger Lakes. And we used to travel across here and then through here at what? One of the most spectacular natural sights in the world, Niagara Falls. And the Niagara River, absolutely unmatched anywhere in the world, really. And that's where we live, here in Cambridge. And no matter where you are, you know you're going to a school on a sacred landscape. That's what I'm telling you in this lecture. I hope not too overarching, but somebody's got to speak for it, because it's spectacular. Now, here is my map. Where did Iroquoians come from? Well, right down, you can see, of course, North America. And then you see a circle here. That circle is the meteor that fell, that I showed in the last lecture. And the great Dibble Chaltoon is right here. Actually, that circle should be farther down. When I did this drawing, I wasn't as aware of some of the images I showed you. It doesn't matter. It's done. That's where the meteor hit. And that's where everything begins in Mayan country for us. A lot of anthropologists feel we came over the Bering Strait up here and came down here. And only recently have they admitted that we were sailors and we could come down the shoreline. Just 10 years ago. Before that, no, you couldn't say that. Certainly, you could never say that Iroquois came from Mayan country. The reason I know is first-hand evidence. Because I had a teacher down here, Mr. Humbotzman, and he took us to Dibble Chaltoon and told us the story of it and the story of the 7 dolls. Then we went to one of those deep cenotes I showed you in the last lecture. Those deep ponds of water that are so deep they're bottomless almost. And he took us next to it and raised up his headband. Hunamku, which they call God. Teach us. Teach us. We have forgotten. Don't let us forget. Then he turned to me and said, your people have been here. I know they have. I can see it in you. They came down the Mississippi. And then we taught them here. This is where they learned some of our practices. They may have even learned the creation story, because we have that same creation story with the twins. Really? That's where your people came from, and then they went back along here. So there's a very strong connection between Mayan country and Iroquois, which is not recognized. But I'll tell you, when our people at Six Nations go down to Mexico for a trip, they're struck by how much the people look like us. It's very confusing. And even the Mexicans get confused. You know, they think they're some kind of strange Mexicans. And you'll see that there is a migrational route that I'm going to show you that comes around this way as well. It's like a great circle. And what do we come through here? Aztec country. And the beautiful city, I can't recall the name just offhand, but it became Mexico City, which is remarkable in itself, the whole history of Mexico City and its location. Stunning. And then we come up here into Aztec territory. And then we come up here through the American Southwest, and what's here, if you're ever there, Navajo and Anasazi territory. They have a very big population today, and they still build and live in the same houses their ancestors did. I'm going to show them to you. And then there's a migration that came along here, the Colorado River, and the beautiful Grand Canyon right here. I'm just pointing out to you the stunning landscape that we're in. And then coming down here, the Missouri River, they're following the pathway of these rivers that because they had no highways. The rivers were the highways for Native people in their migrations. And then we come here, St. Louis, which is actually Cahokia. Far more important than St. Louis. The great mound builders of Cahokia. I'm going to show them to you. Those are our true ancestors. Because from Cahokia, we made our way back to Iroquois. And we made our way from Mayan country. And then we joined together here. And we become like one people. And then we settle here. Why do we settle here? I think all you have to do is look around. All of the ancestors that I just pointed to you did not have wood. It was all stone. Their architecture was stone and mud. When the Iroquois came up here and saw the Carolingian forest, it was so different than anything they had ever known. And it was beautiful. You know why it was beautiful? They didn't have to build anything. Because the forest already provided shelter. Shelter in the trunks of trees, shelter in the sumac bush, shelter in the caves. Because the landscape up here is filled with caves and waterfalls. They didn't have them down there. The Mayans had caves, but they were very different kinds of caves. They were intimidating and scary and deep, and they were almost haunted. Their stories address the spirits of those caves. Even today you can go down into the caves, but when you go into the caves, like I did on one trip, I was scared, truly, truly scared of the spirits that were there. Okay, I mean, it's kind of a boring picture, but this picture gets to the heart of how we wander to our home. It's a snake. And you'll look at that snake, and it has horns. You can see the two horns there. That is called the horned snake. One of the most important spirits in Iroquois, the horned snake. You never hear about it because it is so secret, the language around the horned snake. We still have them. The fact is, in Niagara Falls, in the Great Whirlpool, is the home of the horned snake. They're still there, hundreds of them. I know because my grandmother took me down there to make offerings to the horned snake. I said, I've never heard of this. Oh, yes. And there's a confusing energy. That's why they're in the whirlpool. But they do come around, and then finally they go somewhere. And we follow them because they know where we're supposed to go. Think about it. We were guided by the horned snake to come up here. And that incredible energy of movement. It's not a straight line. It's a wandering. And this beautiful image of the chaos geometry is the exact replication of what we were feeling as we were coming up here. It's confusing, but there is an order. And we had to trust it. We had to have faith that there was an order. That takes a deep connection to creation. This is not an exploration filled with conquest, killing off native people and taking the land away and renaming it in somebody's Eurocentric image. No. We're wandering in nature. And what we saw, as I showed you last lecture, the sun rises through the forest. Amazing. They didn't have forests in Mayan country, or in Anasazi territory, or Mexico, or Cahokia even. They didn't have forests. Beautiful summary of what I said to you the last lecture, and here's how succinct it really is. You know, I went on and on a half an hour, but this is all you really have to know. I'll give you a copy of this if you want. Our duty as the ones who walk about on two legs, the people, the Mother Earth, the waters, the fish, the grasses, and bushes, the medicine plants and the berries, the three sisters, our sustenance, the trees, the animals who walk about on four legs, the birds, the winds, the thunders, our eldest brother the sun, our eldest grandmother the moon, the stars, the spiritual messengers, the Creator. Son Wayadiso. It's done. We did the Thanksgiving in 15 seconds. Because to be honest with you, you can do it in 15 seconds. As long as you do it. But you know, the long one allows us to luxuriate. Now, what did that forest look like when we came to it? This picture. Rocks and moss and white pine trees 100 meters tall. Absolutely enormous. As a matter of fact, last year at this time, I was driving through northern Massachusetts, and they have a road there called the Mohawk Trail, and in it is a forest with 100-meter tall pines. I had to stop and see it. It's a New York State site. When I stopped, they have rangers on the site. It was a young woman. She says, "Oh, Bill, we've named some of the trees after your chiefs who come here to visit. Would you like to go see them? They're not open to the public." I'm going, "What? This is amazing. I've always wanted to see this." And there it was. And they named this one Jake Swamp. Oh yeah, Jake was here. Oh yeah, we gave him that tree. Oh my God. Why don't people know about this? Why am I the only one here? This is amazing. I just looked in the map. It said Mohawk Trail. I'm going to follow it. I'm Mohawk. And the great trees. And you know, when you think about the trees, and here's a great log from a big log cabin at Six Nations. The rings of the trees. They're the record of the ages. In this particular ring, the outside ring is probably when we came to Iroquois. And then at the core, still growing. Now it's been cut for a cabin. And here it is. That is our calendar. Historic calendar. We didn't have months. We had what we called moons. We like to count the days by moons, not by the Gregorian calendar. We didn't use it, we didn't want it. We had the moons. And we had the back of the turtle, had the 13 carapaces, 13 moons. So everything is sort of fitting together. You know, our moons, our turtle, everything. It's all integrated. It's a very potent culture, let's put it that way. And then here's a painting by the American artist Maxfield Parrish. I love it because it's like a young man alone in the forest of primordial, 100-foot tall white pines, standing there with the white light behind him, the entrance to eternity, standing by the white pine. Maxfield Parrish painted in New England, actually no, in New York and Stockbridge, and he was informed by our territory. I know he was, because he painted in the wilderness. And then we see here an evocation, the peace of the canoe. We'll see a little bit more of the canoe. A man alone, in harmony with the squirrels, the fish, his reflection. And this line that occurs at the bottom of the canoe, where what's above and below reflections of each other. We call that the spirit line. And when we're out in, you'll see this when you go out on the lake. It's very still. You will see the reflection of the trees is exactly like the actual trees. Spirit line. And that is, for us, the most important reminder. As above, so below. As the Bible says, we didn't have that, but we understood it just like that. And then we look up, what? To the sky. And remember, when we arrived in Iroquois, it was pitch black. We had no lights. And the sky was incredibly awesome. With this filled with stars. It was almost beyond appreciation. We just would lay there with our mouths open. And what are we looking at in this picture? At the top is a cluster here. Perhaps some of you could name it if I had you here. But it's not really a cluster because those stars are at different depths to each other. But they appear in our sky as 7 major stars. And we call that 7 sisters, the 7 dancing brothers, the Pleiades. And that star formation rises and falls in the sky like this. And when it's right here at the top, that is our midwinter. When it goes out like this is our harvest time, is here. And you can see that cluster through the smoke hole in the longhouse, which I'll show you in a minute. But here it is, a close-up of it. The 7 dancing brothers. And we have stories around it, which I could tell. But there's a great moral story around the 7 brothers, because they're dancing in the sky because they ran away from their parents. And they were allowed by a spirit to ascend into the sky. And their parents were really upset. And they wanted to punish the boys for going into the sky. One stayed back, the youngest. But the others were considered like renegades, now surrendered to the night sky. And we say that this is the hole in the sky through which Sky Woman fell. Actually, right in there. So we look up at night, oh, that's where she came. And quietly in the darkness, they would tell that story. Now, here's New York State. Here is one of those pools cut into the rock, probably by a meteor. And they fill with water. This is a place in Mohawk Terrier called the place of the clean pot. That's what they call it, because the water is very fresh. So they call it the place of the clean pot. There's a Mohawk community near it, and there is looking up the 100-foot tall white pine covered with moss. Absolutely awesome. And they exist. I saw them last summer. And then waterfalls everywhere. There are no waterfalls down there in Mexico or Anasazi or Mayan territory. There are none. Look at this. That's what the ancestors saw when they arrived. They said, we don't have to go anywhere. We can go under there and take a shower and get clean, and then we can gather some water. It's everything we need, because every village, think about it, we have to have water. We can't have a village without water, and it's got to be fresh water. It's like in Mayan territory, they couldn't go to the ocean and drink. They had to find a well somewhere where there was some groundwater coming out. And oftentimes they had to channel it in aqueducts to supply the cities. But not in Iroquois. It was right there. And this is the Mohawk, very old photograph of the Mohawk River with the great cliffs on either side, coming down into our territory toward Albany, New York. We're facing here west. It's a dull photograph because it was taken many years ago, probably in the 1930s, 1920s, when it was pretty well untouched. And there's what it looked like in color. The beautiful forest floor, so soft. And in there, medicines and berries and plants, and among that are the deer. It's quite touching. Now I'm going to show you something that I conjecture is an inspiration for the Longhouse. Because remember, people aren't building anything yet. But I want you to see a line here. As we look at this landscape, there's a line coming right across here. And what it is the top of a huge old sumac bush. And you enter it like this. This is the tunnel and a path going into that sumac bush. Because people would go there and say, we can sleep here, or we can have a meal here, or what they used to like to do is teach there. Because the horned sumac are like deer antlers growing up, and they're even fuzzy like a deer antler. So they said this is a place where the Creator can speak to us, coming down through the antennae of that tree. And there's what it looked like when you were deep inside of it. Magical, inside a sumac bush with the dappled light coming through in the afternoon like this. It's cool, it's pleasant. They used to have the children spend a lot of time here. And then, of course, a shooting star, which you can imagine when it occurred would have been the source of all kinds of stories. Like, what is it? Tell us what it is. So the storytellers would be around in the night, and it was their duty to tell a story around it. Maybe it came in a dream, but we always took their stories to be true. It's what's true, because they are gifted as the storyteller. That is their job. Now, I just show this because these are mice nets in the grass. And they are building a lodge like we built, but in miniature. So in a way, they're no different than us. The mice have a place in our stories. We didn't see them as pests. We observed them like they observed us. And we lived in synchronicity with them, which is a great lesson today, because a lot of people today, when they settle, all they want to do is get rid of all the wild animals. They don't want them near their house. I passed a truck on the way here, and it was called Pest Control. Skedaddle is the name of the company. Skedaddle. I thought it was an interesting use of the word. Big letters, skedaddle. Well, we take care of pests in a very benevolent way. That's what it said on the truck. But we have to get rid of them. We don't want them. And that is the beginning of separation. Well, the continuation of it. Now, here we see an aerial view of a longhouse settlement along the bend in a river, remembering the snake and how it would move around. And even the longhouses, they have this movement in them in this particular depiction. There are no palisades because there was no war. And they're on a high ridge so that when the river flooded, the village didn't flood, but they were close to the water. This is a map of New York State, and this is where our territories were at first. We came up here on this side of the lake as well, which I'll tell you about. And here I'm just tracing out how our 5 nations settled on the land. Red, it's red because I'm Mohawk, but that's our Mohawk territory. Then next is the other people in our confederacy, which I'll tell you about. These are the Oneidas. This is the Onondagas, the Central Firekeepers. This is Lake Cayuga. Cornell University is here. And then this is the beautiful landscape of the Senecas, which cuts right through Niagara Falls. That was their territory. Our first clan mother lived right here, Gigansisa, in the Niagara Falls golf course. But again, if people don't know, I go there, they never heard of Gigansisa. Why not? Well, because they're not paying attention to what they considered an alien culture. But it's the culture of the place, and that's what I'm trying to teach you, is how alive it is. And here we see the extent of the Carolingian forest. It goes right up to Montreal and through here where we are and down in New York State, including the great Adirondack Park, which was the hunting ground of the Mohawks. This is the watershed of Lake Ontario, which replicates that profoundly. These are all the waterways that empty into Lake Ontario, and look at the form of it. The deer. I'm in the deer clan. The deer peacefully traversing the water. It's a very shallow stream. They like to walk in the shallow streams. It's cooling on their feet. And they look out. And you see their horns. They're like the sumac. So we see the deer moving around on four legs. We see the sumac. And it's all in a grand harmony. Then we make a canoe. And we look out on our landscape. Eo. Beautiful. This is why we're going to stay here and make a home for 1,000 years. Because that's how long we were here. At least 1,000 years. New York State. You see the mountains of New York State here and here. They create this beautiful valley that runs right through New York. It's called the New York State Thruway. It's called the Erie Canal. But that trough is very important because people in Manhattan down here had no way to get through here with their goods. Okay, this is the image I imagine of what Iroquoians felt when they were alone on their land, looking out across the still waters of the trees. Say, this is my home. The title of the lecture is The Natural Home. This is the natural home. There is no architecture. Not necessary. Because nature provides all the places we need to live, as it does for the animals. But as we came together in larger groups, I presented Iroquoians with the challenge. Now how are we going to live together? Because there are quite a few of us. And so maybe we should be very efficient and live all together in one long house. But we also know that the idea of that longhouse was already in our consciousness because it was in the sky world. So in a way we're replicating a lesson we already had from the sky world. So all this information is coming from above. Sky Woman, the longhouse, the stars, the meteor, everything's coming from above. And seeding itself here. This is a photograph of the way we would grow our sustenance, corn, beans, and squash. You see in the middle of the photograph the corn stalk. And then down below are the leaves of the squash plant. And if you look very carefully, you're going to see the vine of the beans. And we would plant them all together like they were helpers to each other. We didn't separate things out and put them in rows. We we let them stay in community with each other. Again, another great lesson. It'd be very hard to farm commercially with this kind of idea, but perhaps we could if we set our mind to it. And of course, the beautiful berries you can imagine. We see these in the forest. And the nuts. The bear. You know, bears are interesting because they eat nuts and fruit. They don't eat meat. Well, sometimes they do, but we see them as vicious and tearing up human flesh. But actually, they love berries and nuts. And when we have the bear ceremony at Six Nations, we always bring out berries and nuts to celebrate them when we dance for them. We have the Bear Society, which is a healing society. And the bears, the people who are in the healing society, they're bears, and they're going around a person who needs healing in the middle of the room. And they get to do whatever they want to them, which includes blueberry juice, which they spit on the patient. They spit. And then at the end of the ceremony, they bring out big bags of nuts. And everyone's cracking nuts while they're dancing, and they're crunching the shank of the nut. So we have the blueberries and the nuts, and that's how we honor them. Very famous photograph, but everyone loves it because it's a chief, we don't know his name, wearing a bearskin ceremonial outfit. Just the bearskin and his body, and that's it. Edward Curtis did that, the American photographer. The canoe. We had a different kind of canoe than other native nations. We took a large bark off an elm tree, all in one sheet, and just tied up the two ends. It was very quick. We called them warrior canoes. We could build that canoe in, an hour or so. Because we had to keep moving. Now, then we'll end with this. This is the frame of a longhouse without any covering on it. And I show it to you because you probably recognize how sophisticated this system of trusses is. That it's replicated in buildings all the time today. But this is a very advanced form of structural understanding. First of all, it was going to hold the weight of snow, resist winds, and provide us with a very big house for 100 people. Then we would cover this in elm bark. And we don't really know what the elm bark looked like, how they did it, because the only way we knew what the longhouse looked like were sketches by Jesuit priests when they came, and they missed a lot. They only saw what they could see through French eyes. But we've replicated this one at a site here in Ontario at Crawford Lake, and that's what this is. And there's the interior. Magical. Big smoke holes letting in this soft light. And you can imagine the fragrances of hanging herbs and corn and, the skins of animals in the lofts at the side, and the fragrance of burning fires and food. It was stunning and very spiritual. The only thing that we could possibly compare this to is a church. But it was a sacred place, but it was also a place to live, to sleep, to eat, to, have children, and, make love and everything all at once in one room. And apparently people were very quiet. They had to be. You could try not to be too noisy. There's a group of longhouses, enclosed now in palisades, which they started to do when native nations started warring with each other after the settlers came. They became very confused, and their alliances were confused, and so they would fight with each other. And in that, they had to raise walls around the longhouse villages, and quite interesting, the British called them castles because it reminded them of their buildings with walls around them. So, for instance, in New York State, we have something called the Mohawk Castle. It's not a castle, it's this. So that very interesting, again, interchange of two worlds becoming mixed, but unfortunately a little confused because we didn't straighten it out. We just let them kind of mix up, and in the end, we lost our villages. Okay, well, that's the natural home that we've been given. No architecture, just the natural world. It's pretty stunning when you think about it. Like, the work's all done for us. It's all done for us. We just have to go out and occupy it. And they know that native people had a very high percentage of leisure time in their days. Yes, they worked hard, but they also had lots of time to do whatever they wanted to do. Go under the waterfalls, to do weaving and carving, or play games. We had a lot of games, and sing songs. I'll describe the construction of the longhouse in a later lecture, but it's a very elaborate ceremonial process where people would sing as they were building. And I'll tell you what they were singing about. Okay. So, the thing to remember in this talk, the first architecture is given to us. We don't have to build anything. No. It's all done. There is no need to build anything. It's already built for us by nature. And all we have to do is be grateful that we've been given so much. Oh no. It's the end.